Thank you for listening to the Dog Trainers Podcast, a podcast created by dog trainers for dog trainers, or anyone who's ever fallen in love with man's best friend. Right. Yeah, I know. I think we have less control over the variables, right? And what we're doing is we're really trying to do our best to make sure that the owner knows the goals, that it's clear, that their technique is on point, and we have to try our best to give the owners all the tools that they need to be successful. But the only thing we cannot guarantee in private training is that they will actually do their work. You know, we can really do our best. But okay, that was a great list of pros and cons for private.
Let me ask you a question then. We can get into the others if you want to after, but here's a question for you that, I know we didn't dive into kind of on purpose just because we wanted to keep this pretty cut and dry, and maybe we can do this at a later episode. But as a rough outline real quick, where do you find benefit for hybrid programs? Meaning, I know you and I have had clients, I think together actually, and if not like independently, but we were like, just around each other because I was in LA, where let's say maybe you start as privates and you realize the owners would be better off as a board and train. So you just convert it over and, so something like that. What are your thoughts on that kind of thing?
So sometimes hybrid programs, you don't plan them, and sometimes you do plan them, right? So there's been some situations where, I've started someone off in a private program and they had no clue how hard the work was. Like, they have no clue about it. And so 2 sessions in, they go, this is tough. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and do a board and train program, right? Now, any type of board and train program that, hopefully, and this is not always the case because there's so many different generations of dog trainers out right now, but hopefully when you do a board and train program that you guys do have some type of follow-up process after, where you're able to teach the owners what to do and teach them how to, follow through and keep progressing their relationships with their dogs. That's ideal. So that would kind of be a hybrid of board and train, and then also private trainings post training.
Right.
Now, a couple of things that I've done is I can do hybrid programs within my group classes and my private trainings, right? So for example, I might have someone who has a dog in privates, who is slightly reactive towards other dogs, right? Lunges, pulling, etc. So in private training, we're able to get that under control. We're able to teach the owners how to manage the dog, how to control the dog, how to develop obedience tools to get that dog to pay more attention and be less kind of like spacey or all over the place with
impulsive,
the owner. And then impulsive. Yeah. And then sometimes when that happens, when we get the dog to a certain point, then the dog is a great candidate for higher level group classes. Right. And that's where now the owner's new skill set now has to be put to a different test or put to a different level of difficulty. And it's through that process where the owner learns how to navigate their dog's skills around groups of dogs and strangers and people at the park or in public. Now we start saying that they become better dog handlers for their specific dog because they're now put in that semi-controlled environment.
Correct.
Right? So those hybrids kind of work hand in hand. I usually will go private to group class, or I'll go board and train to group class, or I'll go day train to group class or privates, right? Just because it naturally adds the necessary amount of pressure and difficulty to the owners so that they have to step up to the plate. Right. And that's just an example. Right. Yeah. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, absolutely. And I just want to give one quick example of the opposite. So let's say on the flip side, we have a couple clients who are friends, and each of them bought a couple Dobies from Austria, like real pretty dogs, real drivey dogs, like mentally speaking. We did a semi-private kind of group class thing. It was just a couple of them, right? And we did all their puppy stuff because they started these dogs young. And so the dogs learned all their stuff. I mean, they're super young, but they're so smart, and they picked everything up just fantastically. Now they want to get into real advanced stuff. One of them wants to do bite work. The other one just wants to do off-leash work. And, so now we're talking more individualized things depending on each dog. So we went from semi-privates to privates. You know what I mean? I have had it before to where we start a dog with just private lessons because they're that young. And then when they're old enough, then we get into a board and train to get into the nitty gritty. The dog needs to learn how to compress, because their son has like anxiety issues, or the dog needs to learn, whatever the dog needs to learn. that it's going to be beneficial for me to have the dog and really condition them over a period of time, but not necessarily right now. When the dog is older, that's when I'm going to need to have this much time with them.
Yep. No, that's it. Those are beautiful examples. Beautiful examples. What was I going to say? What do you think so this is a good one that we can compare and contrast. The difference between a day training and the difference between a board and training. Okay. Let's talk about that.
Okay. Now let me clarify with you. So the last time I had a chance to kind of dive into your programs with you, day training, is it only Monday through Friday?
Those are a different form of day training. Those are like week by week training or like
Right. Well, I know you like keep the dog for the week. I'm talking it's daily, like the dog, they drop them off in the morning, pick them up in the afternoon type thing.
Yeah. So so again, it depends on how the trainer wants to format it. Some trainers, they might do a 7-day a week day training where the dog gets dropped off for 7 days. Typically what I've seen in the industry is people do kind of something very similar to how kids go to school, right? They go to school Monday through Friday,
Right.
and then they're off on the weekends, right? So
just for clarity for your question though, like what, give me the example. Are you talking about day training, meaning the dog's only there for the day, every day, 5 days a week, 7 days a week?
5 to 7 days a week, exactly. And then the other one is just a complete
Straight up
board and
board
train
and
where the
train.
dog is with you for board and train.
Excellent. Okay. So pros and cons. I think that the pro of the day training is that the day training will be a little bit less expensive than the board and train program. I think that the con, or am I right on that? Sorry, let me.
Yeah. Usually, yeah.
So I think a con then would be less dogs would. No, let me rephrase that. Certain dogs that would qualify for board and trains, or maybe be absolutely ideal candidates for a board and train, maybe wouldn't qualify for day training, like an aggressive dog, right? Like a Nukas, like a snowball.
Right.
Like these are dogs that we've trained in the past that are highly reactive. Let's say. So, pro for day training, owner gets the dog back every night. Con, owner has to do their homework every night.
Yep.
Let's see. Pro, the owner gets to do the work alongside you. It's kind of the as I see it, correct me if you think I'm wrong. Day training is probably the most even of the training, meaning you do 50%, they do 50% at the same time. Con is there are potential variables that we cannot account for. There is a lack of momentum as I see it because board and train programs are not perfectly linear. Some days are harder on the dog than others. And so from a trainer's perspective, I think that it's a cool idea to offer a day training program. But again, just keep in mind, if I were to do day training programs, I would probably run it pretty similar to like, would this dog do well in a group class setting? And if the dog qualifies for a group class, then I think day training would also work out because a pro of day training would be you're obviously a trainer. You have other dogs, you have other distractions, you have the ability to socialize this dog like nobody's business. Whereas the owner may not, or just may not have the time or the capacity, as we've talked about before. We talk about the potential tools to make that happen. I think of like you've got certain tools, certain knowledge, certain things that would just make that process easier. Even if the owner could do it in a perfect world, just realistically, you'll do it better and safer and so on.
Right.
Does that answer your question?
Right. Yeah, no, I think those are perfect compare and contrasting. I think one thing I see a lot in so like day training, the typical client I see doing a successful day training, a working dog, a dog who just wants to develop certain skills, healing, sits down, stays, just a typical obedience development. But this dog doesn't necessarily have any severe behavioral. There's no separation anxiety. There's no aggression. There's no heavy reactivity. There's no, high socialization needs. Like, so, the typical puppy dog under 8 months or so can qualify, or a dog under a year can qualify for a day training program as long as there's no outstanding issues, right? You send the kid to school Monday through Friday. He goes home, you do work with that owner on the week, on Friday, give them homework for Saturday, Sunday. They drop the dog back off on Monday for school, right? So this has been a very successful program for me over the years, but with those types of dogs. If you've tried, I have experimented with dogs with certain behavioral issues, but one thing I see across the board is I do see that day trainings tend to be longer in length. So, for example, if I were to do a 4-week board and train program, right, where the dog lives with me, whatever I needed that 4 weeks for takes me about 6 weeks in day training. And the reason for that is because the dogs, they lose that momentum, as you talked about. In a board and train program, we can develop momentum. We can immediately jump to the next phase of a training because the dog is ready to receive that information. And so we're able to kind of hit that pocket, teach that dog that concept, and it's very seamless. However, anytime that the dog goes home in a day training program, they have potential for regression, right? So so it's like I'm taking 2 steps forward, 1 step back, 2 steps forward, 1 step back every time we do a day training program. So that's another reason why most day training programs have to be a little bit longer for the dog's conditioning and success. But also we do need to work with the actual owners themselves to make sure that the management system and the rules are being followed week by week. And the dogs will kind of tell you, if you train the dog Monday through Friday and they're doing awesome on Friday evening, and then they come back Monday and they're shitty, well, that tells you whether the owners kind of did their homework or not.
Right. And that kind of ties into whether or not the environment is conducive for training, like we've talked about before. Now, let me get slightly technical for just a second, and then I'm gonna toss a question onto you. Okay. So
Sure.
to get slightly technical, I just wanted to talk about, since both of us kind of brought up momentum in training. An example. Let's say you have a dog who does day training, or the dog could do a board and train program. Why is the momentum a little bit quicker, a little bit more efficient in a board and train? Well, that's because we can control the little variables that really help us eke out the last 3, 4, 5, 10% of a dog, right? Like that's what separates, good from like excellent training, right? Because most dog trainers, for all the flack they give each other, they mostly all do things right. It's just to get things like pretty much perfect, that changes a ton. Now, what do I mean? Let's say, I think this is a trick I learned from you. Let's say we have puppies in, right? This one could be day training. Mom fed him. Mom sent him to day training, and it's a pro for mom because just like the kids go to school, puppy's gone, man. I can clean the house. I can go to work. I can do whatever the hell I got to do. Here's the con for the trainer. Dog's fed, comes in. He's a puppy. He's food driven, but it would be nice if instead of feeding the puppy breakfast in their crate, I could just work him with his own food, because I know he's hungry because he hasn't eaten since last night, and the dog is straight driven, and that's awesome because now I'm not filling the puppy up with extra treats on top of their food, meaning I don't have to wait very long until lunchtime where I just do it again with the food. So like I can be a little more, and it's easier for us too because we can plan out our day, right? I've got a couple puppies in right now. I already know I work the dogs in this order because I work the puppies first because, they have to eat, whereas the other dogs can eat in their crates and I can still work them later. Like, and they'll still want to work because I'm doing other types of training anyway. So reasons like that, or let's say with an aggressive dog, a very hyper nervous dog, I work with a lot of rescues. Brent has his own foundation these days, which is awesome. And,
thanks. Canis Foundation. Check it out.
Canis Foundation. Check it out. For sure. And I'm getting there too, but for the time being, I'm with the Phoenix Metro Chamber Foundation and I am an executive board member. Woo, woo, shout out. So, but here's an example. And I think when Brent and I were like new friends to each other, man, remember Seven? The what's it? Dog's name was Seven, right? It was a pity.
The pit bull.
And so I remember Brent was sitting, there's the big kennels. Like Brent was sitting with his back to the kennel. This dog is barking his ass off at Brent, from inside the kennel. Brent's outside the kennel. And Brent sits there until the dog stops barking, just stops barking. And then Brent throws some boiled chicken over his shoulder into the kennel and then leaves. And the dog watches him like a hawk until he leaves. And by leaves, I mean out of sight, out of another room. And we come back later, chicken's gone, and over time, we're able to safely get this dog into our hands so that we can do some work. But that took time. That's not really something you could do with the day training program. If anything, it would be harder because not only do you have the option for the chicken, but the dogs getting dropped off from the owner every day, man, their territory like reflex is on alert.
Yep. It's that 1 step forward, that 2 steps forward, 1 step back kind of thing. And yeah, when you're dealing with aggressive dogs, if you try to do a day training program, it's 1 step forward, 2 steps back sometimes, but it's because the dog never gets acclimated to you. The dog never gets used to you. The dog never feels he has to actually bond or like you. But yeah, definitely I wouldn't do with aggressive cases or behavioral cases. I wouldn't recommend a day training program.